now is the mayor of Orland Park, who's running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District against Representative Sean Casten. He's Keith Pecaw. Why do you think it was a bad idea for President Biden this week to grant over $300 billion in student loan forgiveness?
There are many reasons it's a bad idea. These people have chosen to take out the loans. They've made decisions as adults, and they should have to pay them back. It shouldn't be up to, the people in my district that decided to go to trade school and are a plumber or a carpenter, or decided to open their own small business when they were young, or are a FedEx driver. It's not up to them to pay back the loans. It's not up to the people who went to school like I did and paid our own loans back and paid for our own children's college and had our children take out loans so they could learn that lesson of the value of paying for their education. Let
me ask, Mr. Mayor, if I could just ask, I mean, one of the arguments is that there's a large burden. Typically, it's $38,000 or $40,000, I think, the average here in Illinois and pretty much across the country for those who have these student loans. And that's one of the reasons that young people in their 20s and 30s, recent graduates, are not marrying, they're not buying houses, they're not having children. Reducing these loans might give them an opportunity to do that if they want.
These children made their choices, and they were adults when they made those choices to go to school and take on this debt. So I have a daughter who's 27, a son who's 29, and they're paying back their loans. And I know my son has paid back all of his. I have a daughter who's in her 30s, and she chose not to go to college. And why should she pay for my younger children? Why should she pay off their college? It is not fair to the people who chose to take different paths and were more responsible with their money. I chose to go to college. I chose to take out debt. I knew what I was doing when I took out that debt. I chose to go into a profession where I would get a return.
Let me ask about what's been a big issue here in Illinois. The state schools from SIU and Eastern, Western, Northern, the U of I, and others, those have soared. The tuition, the total costs of attending those schools have soared. Shouldn't we? How do we get that under control?
So a 7% annual increase over 40 years, relative to a 3% annual increase, and for wages and for the CPI. The schools have run amok, and it's been largely because of government-run programs and government-run loan programs that essentially allow people to take out whatever they feel like taking out, and then they can't pay it back. There's a responsibility to make sure that if you're providing a service for someone in education, that on the backside of that there is a return on that. And it's a responsibility of the people who ultimately make that choice, like we did when my son went to University of Illinois. He's an aerospace engineer. There was a return for the dollar that he spent there. And you compare that to someone who gets a degree in medieval Latin. Well, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that someone with a degree in medieval Latin is not very marketable. Why should other people in the U.S. have to pay the debt for someone who goes to college?
Congressman Krishnamurthy he suggested that somebody going to a trade school or taking some educational program that's not traditionally recognized would be able to get a tax credit.
I don't think they should get the tax credit either. I don't think that anybody should be paying schools for somebody else. I think everyone makes their choice. And the nice thing about the trade schools is they make the choice and they know they have a job coming out that pays them. And why should they at this point be giving people money that went to college that made a potentially a poor choice as far as their investment decision in their education? I don't think that's right.
So would you like to see the court step in here and block President Biden from doing this?
I believe it's unconstitutional. There's no place in the Constitution that gives the president the right to spend money like this. And
the Democrats point to a 1965 law that has some language that might open the door for this.
So I'm sure they do point to some 1965 law that might open the door for this. At the end of the day, there's no place in the Constitution that I see that says that the president can spend $300 billion of our tax money to pay off student loans that someone had a debt. For example, would you support paying off someone's auto loans? Would you support someone's paying off their mortgages because they bid off more than they can chew in their mortgage? Of course not. So why would we be any different for college? People are adults. They've made these choices. They should pay back the money. And if we want to have a discussion about how universities are charging way too much and how they've allowed their tuition to go through the roof. I mean, Harvard's endowment is over $40 billion. So the universities certainly are culpable in that, but people can make those choices, and they have been. They've been starting to go to community colleges and other things to offset those costs. They've been making better decisions. If you're going to be a kindergarten teacher, a first grade teacher, and you need a degree to do that, probably going to Harvard and expecting a payback probably isn't the best choice in the world. So there are other choices that are more economical that you can certainly afford it.
So let me ask you if you're concerned about what seem to have been some setbacks for Republicans in some of these special elections. There was one in the Hudson Valley in New York where it was a swing district and the Democrat won. Do you see the prospects for what looked a few months ago like a big red wave taking control, Republicans taking control of the House and Senate? Do you see the red wave receding?
So I don't know the specifics of those districts, and I'm really, frankly, not worried about the rest of the districts. I'm worried about the 6th district for Congress, and I think that this particular bill, which my opponent or this particular action, which my opponent has leaned into, is inappropriate, is wrong, and I think the people in the district agree that it's wrong. I mean, from those people who are union members and and have gone to the trade schools and are working hard for their families, they're paying for college for someone else. For those people who paid for their own college like I did, now I'm paying, and for my children, now I have to pay for college for someone else. For those people who are still paying their college loans, maybe they make more than $125,000. Why should they pay for someone else to get their college loans? It's wrong. We all incurred these debts ourselves for our own reasons, or chose not to incur these debts, and we shouldn't be saddled with other people's decisions. And I think that's how the people of the 6th district feel. And I think that President Biden and Sean Casten are absolutely 100% wrong on this issue, and we need to hold people accountable for the decisions that they make and not bail them out.
Orland Park Mayor Keith Pecaw, the Republican nominee in the 6th Congressional District against Mr. Casten. Thanks for joining us.